Hey everyone, welcome back to Reboot, GameSpot's opinion editorial show. I'm Mike Mahardy.
And I'm Jake Decker.
And last week we published a video about Injustice 2 and how I think it does a lot of things that pulled me into a genre that I'm not super familiar with, and I've always found pretty impenetrable. I think that the game uses accessibility in a lot of good ways, and if you want to go check out that video from last week, go do that now and then come back and you can get into our Q&A with us. This is one of our off-week episodes, so we are just going to kind of answer YouTube comments. We usually do like Twitter replies as well, but we didn't get as many questions via Twitter this week. And then, as always, we'll tease our next episode, so we might as well just jump right into the questions.
Sure. Do you want me to read the first one?
Yeah, go.
All right, first question is Wade D. McGinnis from YouTube, and he says, I don't think accessibility strictly means dumbing down a game. Give players more options to work with. It's up to them to choose to use them. It's no different than having a difficulty slider for a title. So I think first thing that jumps out at me is how he mentions difficulty slider. Now, this video focused on Injustice, and yes, there is a difficulty slider, but I think with fighting games, difficulty is one thing, but then understanding the game is a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and Injustice 2 specifically, between, meter burns, the wager system, the clash system, super moves, air escapes, and just to name a few of the myriad things that this game does differently than a lot of fighting games. Yeah, it's learning all these different systems and also how to use them, because then you get into, like online modes or, PvP stuff, and it's just absolute chaos when you're trying to figure out how to use these when you're fighting against an opponent who's clearly better at fighting games than you, and it's tougher to introduce new gameplay elements or, what did Wade say, enemy variety or difficulty sliders to a game without sacrificing the balance. And in fighting games, balance is everything. Right now, I know Deadshot's kind of seen as the cheap character in Injustice 2. I'm sure they'll nerf him at some point, maybe. But yeah, I think it's just tough to introduce new things for people who want more in the game without, keeping that balance. Yeah, then that's tough.
I think one thing we both agree on, and was kind of the whole point of the video, was accessibility. He says, I don't think accessibility strictly means dumbing down a game. And I think, that was the point of this video, rather than accessibility doesn't mean making I used gameplay from Fable 3, which is a game that I felt really dumbed down the RPG elements of previous games. And with Injustice, it did a good job of guiding you into all those different tactics and abilities and mechanics that you were just talking about, rather than cutting them completely or making them one button presses or whatever.
Yeah. Wade McGinnis, thanks so much for your YouTube comment. Mr. Snake Cake.
That's a rad name.
I hate snakes, but I like cakes. How does loot equal accessibility?
Are you Indiana Jones?
I'm not the only person who doesn't like snakes outside of fictional archaeologists. Mr. Snake Cake on YouTube. How does loot equal accessibility? The word you're looking for is carrot on a stick. Injustice needs to incorporate something like the missions from Guilty Gear Revelator so you can actually learn stuff in-game. I think the gear was one part of why I said the game is accessible. I think the multiverse actually helps a lot with that, because you can stick at your own difficulty level if you want to keep earning loot with the AI difficulty bars. And then if you want to fight harder ones, you can take your level 20 character into this 8-tier 5-star AI difficulty battle. The gear, I think, does make it accessible, though, because I think people who are used to fighting games having this, apparently static kind of structure, right? You get into it, you learn there's these, 20 characters to learn, and then outside of that, the people who aren't super into fighting games might not find as many incentives to play outside of just learning, which learning a game is one of the most rewarding things in my opinion, but I don't ever have the time to learn something. Like, I want to play Tekken 7, but I'm not so sure that I'll be able to keep working for that intangible skill increase, as opposed to seeing the gear and Injustice as a great incentive, the multiverse allowing me to just play how I want. The story mode itself, like any fighting game that has a story mode, is kind of, you can get through without knowing too many fighting game skills. But I think this game is just a confluence of so many things that actually invited me in, that it actually encouraged me to keep learning it. Like, I have 3 characters that I know really well: Green Arrow, Aquaman, and Robin, and I like those 3, and those are kind of my mains, but I want to keep learning new characters because of those things I mentioned.
Yeah, and I don't think loot is necessarily the reason, I don't think loot is what makes this game accessible. I think the loot is what makes it gives me more of an incentive to learn these different mechanics. And like what you said, the multiverse, sure, I play the multiverse, that's how I learn new things, but the fact that I'm doing this, learning new things, and getting that little bit of loot is like a nice icing on the cake.
On the snake cake.
On the snake cake. Thank you, Mr. Snake Cake.
Mr. Snake Cake.
This one is from Haku PSO, and he is from YouTube.
YouTube, California.
I think Capcom has also done a great job with accessibility in the recent Monster Hunter games. What they did right was lower the initial bar so that players could stick with it long enough to see if Monster Hunter was something they might enjoy long term. However, later in the game, the series' signature difficulty that fans crave still lies in wait. The result is Monster Hunter games that are selling better in the West, and the challenge is still there for the vets. I agree with this. I've played a couple. I've dabbled in Monster Hunter games. I played a couple on the 3DS, and while I don't think those games are for me, I definitely can understand why people get so into them, and they were definitely easy to pick up when I think Monster Hunter 4 Generations was the one for the 3DS, I think?
Yes.
For the new 3DS, or the
most recent game last year.
Yeah,
no,
not the most recent game. The one before that.
It was Monster Hunter 4.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. But anyway, that game in particular, I got because I wanted to play with friends, and I had a great time playing with friends, and I could definitely see myself getting really into it from there. However, I kind of lost interest. But I think Monster Hunter games are definitely a good comparison for this.
Yeah, and that's probably like the definition of good accessibility. Rather than taking out some of the depth and kind of spreading it out to make it more accessible to everyone, and then kind of leaving veterans, like Haku said, in the dust, maintain that depth so the veterans who know what's going on can keep playing in the late game, but those new people who are coming in can learn the game right off the bat, or at least after a few hours as opposed to like 30, and know whether they want to keep going. And I think that's like I said, the definition of good accessibility. I think Injustice 2 does that really well. I think it is going to make me, in the long term, an Injustice 2 veteran, but right now I'm still a newcomer, but I'm really thrilled to keep learning all these things. It's about that time to tease our next episode. We are aware that last time we did this, we did not actually end up talking about Prey. And what were we talking about?
We were going to do side quests, but then we
side quests,
pivoted.
Yes. Jake is actually going to, I think you're using that as your own side project.
Maybe.
No pun intended.
See.
But yeah, we had to pivot last minute, and then I ended up falling in love with Injustice 2 out of nowhere. And also, we were going to talk about Prey, but I'm working on my own side project that has a lot about Prey in it. You can keep an eye out for that. But next week, we will stick to this, as far as I know. Red Dead Redemption 2 just got delayed, so we are going to use that as an opportunity. I've been speaking to a few developers over the past few months when we interview them for videos about delayed games, and I think it's a little more common knowledge now that delaying games is not a bad thing at all. But after Mass Effect Andromeda kind of got rushed out, and people who were hoping to see Red Dead Redemption 2 in September might be disappointed that there is a delay, we want to talk about why delays are not always bad, and when they can be bad and when they can actually be really beneficial. Because right now it appears that Rockstar just wants to take its time. But we're going to dive more into that and kind of talk about, the nature of game delays and the business side of it, but we'll make it a little more interesting than I'm making it sound now.
I'm looking forward to this episode because Red Dead is one of my favorite games of all time, even though it won't be just about Red Dead, mostly about Red Dead Redemption 2. It's still something I think a lot of us are very excited about. So I think it'll be timely and hopefully interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And as always, get your YouTube comments in on this episode or the past episode. Go back and catch up if you're not right now. And we're looking forward to talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 and game delays next week. We'll see you then.
See ya.